If you haven't guessed by the title, today I'm going to be talking about the Purge franchise, because tragically, I sat down and watched every single one. Before my first attempt at getting through all these movies, I had only seen the first film in the franchise. I sort of wondered to myself how there were 5 Purge films. I would have guessed there was only 3, maybe 4, but my displeasure didn't end at realizing there were 5 Purge movies. You'd think that with a franchise that has a film called The Purge Election Year that was put out in 2016, I would have thought to myself, hey, this is probably going to be a bit political. Call me stupid, but it goes a bit beyond politics and veers straight into a path of just sort of light propaganda. I will be trying my hardest to not get political during this video, and I will try to view these movies and review them or judge them with an apolitical lean, but let me tell you, that is not going to be easy. And if you disagree with anything I say, then bye, you suck. The Purge, let's start it. But first, of course, spoiler warnings, I'm going to be spoiling every single one of the Purge movies and talking about the story, or just complaining about the story. If you haven't seen these, and for whatever reason you want to put yourself through 10 to 12 hours of mediocre film, do it. Perhaps you may even enjoy them. I, however, did not, and that was after watching all of them twice. That's like 20 hours of Purge movies. So, if you liked the video, let me know, because that was a painful experience. With the introductions out of the way, let's talk about the first movie that started this whole mess, The Purge. I could sort of recall the plot, because it's very simple. People in their house trying to survive a night where maniacs are trying to murder everybody, and then their house gets broken into. Since the movie didn't blow me away originally, watching it however long ago this movie came out, I kind of expected a pretty middling experience, but that's not what I got. The Purge takes place in a very different America. It's in the not-so-distant future of 2022. Violent crime and unemployment rates are at a record low. This is just sounding like an alternate reality to the 2022 I remember. After we learn how well-off the nation of America is now, with thanks to The Purge, we get to meet the main character of this movie, Ethan Hawke. Don't remember his character's name, but he's a pretty affluent fella who sells security systems to people for this very special night. These aren't just any normal security systems either. These are some high-tech, buffed-up, anti-Purge systems. So look at that. The Purge is creating jobs. We then get to a moment that kind of began my hatred towards these films.
We are inherently a violent species. Wars, genocide, murder. The denial of our true selves is the problem. The Purge not only contains societal violence to a single evening, but the countrywide catharsis creates psychological stability by letting us release the aggression we all have inside of us.
I agree that people are naturally suited towards violence, but not without purpose. We aren't all psychopaths or sadistic enough to just want to hurt people to get off on it. It's more common in a society like our own today that is under irreparable decay, but it's not an inherent human nature to want to cause harm to others, unless they're trying to harm you or your family or your friends. Anyhow, when Ethan Hawke arrives home, we get to meet the family and see who he's going to be riding out the Purge with. We got the boring mom, the autistic son, who drives around a weird remote control creepy robot that won't totally become an important factor in this movie's plot. Oh yeah, we have the teenage daughter, who is just, that's the perfect explanation of her character as far as that goes. She's just a teenage girl. Before locking up the house for the night, we get a really awkward family dinner. The movie tries to show us that even affluent families are actually really up, man, and not happy, even with all that money. All isn't as it seems, just like every other movie. I feel like this is just cope inserted by Hollywood to make the people that eat this slop up feel better about themselves and their shitty situation. That is me being very pessimistic. It's kind of funny knowing that the people that write these movies and direct them and produce them are all filthy rich for the most part. Sure, there are some set designers and people like that aren't too well off, but the fact that all of them decide to write all these very rich characters out to be unhappy, kind of entertaining. Like, guys, don't look at us. We're just like you. I don't like that.
Sorry, I forgot to take my vitals earlier. By the way, there's a slight deviation in my heart rate, but other than that, nothing to worry about.
Okay, thank you. Zoe, you're dead.
I don't want to do this anymore. It's stupid.
I feel like I am being a bit nitpicky to this movie, but after 5 movies of terrible metaphors on society's woes, I feel like being a dickhead for a little while. After dinner, the family locks up, and we get to see their little safe room that they have, where they have cameras surrounding their house, and even some just-in-case weapons. We also get to see this little TV broadcast that's like, this is the commencement of the annual Purge, or whatever. Then they all head their own way, which is meant to further show their lack of camaraderie and familial bonding.
This is your emergency broadcast system announcing the commencement of the annual purge sanctioned by the U.S. government. Government officials of ranking 10 have been granted immunity from the purge and shall not be harmed. Any and all crime, including murder, will be legal for 12 continuous hours.
While going their separate ways, we see the daughter go to her own bedroom where her boyfriend, which we saw earlier, decided to stick around because he has a message to tell the dad. We get way too much teenage tomfoolery, is the best way to describe it, before the son finally notices on the camera outside that there's a guy running away from people shooting. It then cuts back to the teen daughter whose boyfriend tells her, like, hey, I'm sick of your dad, and the dad doesn't want her to be with him because she's too young, or probably, and both in high school. I don't know. She doesn't look like a freshman. I don't really get it, man. Maybe he's a college kid being a weirdo. The people on Twitter would be furious, that's for sure. But before this kid can confront her father, the autistic boy decides to do something that is, very autistic. He decides the best course of action when everyone is out killing each other is to let this stranger into their home.
Let's go! This way!
This causes everything to just erupt in chaos. The boyfriend tries to shoot the dad. The boyfriend gets shot. He dies later. Who cares? But this gives enough time for the stranger that just entered into the house to run off and hide. Then we get the family separated again. The daughter runs off after her boyfriend. Oh no, daddy shot my boyfriend. Kind of ordeal. And Ethan Hawke runs around the house being a father trying to figure out what the this homeless guy's doing in his home until... these strangers show up. You may ask why these people are wearing masks when everything is legal for the night. I mean, you could assume that they're trying to hide their identity because they might feel shame for doing this. But... so, I guess the masks are just trying to be, like, scary, like the strangers from years earlier. This happens every film. If Halloween store masks really scare you, then are these the movies for you guys?
Several of your dear neighbors informed us that you, the Sandins, have inexplicably given him sanctuary. Mr. and Mrs. The man you're sheltering is nothing but a dirty homeless pig.
So the strangers go on to explain that they want the homeless guy that they let in, or they're gonna come in and kill the family and him, but they can hand him over. There's a couple problems with this. They decide to shut off the power of the house, so they want the guy inside, and then they make it harder for the family to find him inside. And then the other problem is just a problem with the film. We then get to see the family run around for an hour and a half searching for the guy in the dark, where nothing happens. So they creep around in the dark forever, playing cat and mouse, until the autistic son decides to come up with another brilliant plan and helps the homeless man hide in one of these little hidey holes he has in the house. He has several of them. That was shown earlier in the introduction of the movie to be like, hey, big plot point here. Also, he uses the robotic car thing. I mean, you do have to have setup. I can't really complain. This movie just sucks. This completely backfires again. You know, the son is just completely everything up all the time. When the daughter manages to run into the homeless guy and then he holds her hostage, they get into a big, long, drawn-out fight. Ethan Hawke ends up the guy up. Then the family joins together and duct tapes him up because they're about to take him out to the strangers outside to, you know, save their family. You have two options. You let them come in and kill everyone, or you go off like, hey, we can give them out. If they want to kill us, they're going to do it anyway. I guess you could hold up inside the house and try to defend yourselves, which would probably work too. But they seem to think that they're just screwed. The part that makes zero sense about this is the daughter morally grandstanding on Ethan Hawke, being like, oh, you're such a bad person for doing this. Bitch, I am trying to save my family's life. Are you a idiot? That had to be said, because what the is the whole family doing, bickering at Ethan about how he's a bad guy while they're helping him duck? He's trying to save you. That is his duty. Who cares about the random man you just let into your home? He could be one of them.
It's wrong.
We don't have a choice.
It's so wrong. This is so wrong.
Listen, we don't have any other choice. We don't have a choice.
Don't touch me. Okay, look at you. Look at what you're doing. Nothing is ever going to be okay again.
Shortly after subduing the guy, it turns out to be too late anyway, because the something that they claimed was going to arrive shortly is there. I was thinking it would be an RPG or some other sort of explosive that would help them break into the house. Instead, we see a big truck pull up. It took them over an hour to bring a a truck over. They had to wait like 3 hours for a truck to pull up. Huh?
I want all these barricades down.
So I bid thee farewell, sweet Sanders. Release the beast boys, let the killing commence.
After attaching some chains to the door, they pull it down and break in, and now the family just has to defend themselves. What seemed like a hopeless idea in the first place is completely flipped on its head because these strangers, although the family is outnumbered, are fucking dumb. With complete disregard to their own lives, you see this random woman running throughout a house that she's never been in, holding 2 machetes. She could walk around a corner and get just blasted. And she does. They all do. They just run around like idiots. I could sit here and show you Ethan Hawke just walking up on these 2 who can't hit a shot, getting murdered by him because they have no clue what they're doing. It takes all of the pacing that has led up to this and all the thrill that could be there completely out of the movie. He gets shot and dies anyway, yet you have these people being complete idiots.
Thank you for this unforgettable purge, Mr. Sandin.
I'm assuming the director thought that maybe some of this was like edge of your seat kind of thrill ride, but there's zero. When the bad guys are idiots who are too stupid to even stand a chance against the people that they're supposed to be preying on, it makes you completely lose interest. All of this is just very pointless. And of course, the family just manages to kill them all. Yeah, as I said, Ethan dies. Some neighbors show up. You're like, oh, they're gonna save the family, but it turns out they're like, haha, now we're gonna kill you because we don't like you guys. You guys suck. Even though Ethan Hawke sold us a really cool security system, we're all jealous of you because you're better than us, and now we're gonna kill you. Oh wait, the homeless guy from earlier, he shows back up and saves the family. Yeah, the movie ends with some sirens like the purge is over. Fuck me, man. Not even bad in the same way most films are. It's just very frustrating and boring. There are a couple funny moments with the main evil guy, like he kisses Ethan Hawke, starts rhyming all the time. Does it make up for an hour and a half of idiocy at a snail's pace, though? No, it doesn't. This may unironically be one of the worst movies I've ever seen, just because of my reaction to it. Maybe I'm a little baby who's crying right now. I was frustrated upon first viewing it, and that frustration built more because of the following film. Maybe the charm of this movie is hidden behind all the nihilistic metaphor that turns me off. I could be missing the point of the most profound film that's came out in the last 20 years. But even after a full week, maybe even longer, of seeing this movie, I'm still gonna give it a 0. A big, fat 0. The Purge? 0 out of 10. If The Purge were real, I'd go after the person that made me waste an hour and 20 minutes of my life. After all, we may all be evil. I think this first film just goes to show how much missed opportunity there was with this idea. The core idea is pretty fun, but it's mangled by complete incompetence throughout. So the second film in the Purge universe franchise, whatever the Purge Anarchy. This film goes down a different direction than the last. We're not just stuck inside of a home anymore. This film takes place on the streets of Los Angeles or some other city. I also think that this movie pulls entirely away from the horror genre. Instead, The Purge Anarchy goes down a more action-oriented route. The movie begins with an assortment of different characters all preparing for their prospective Purge night. So what you gotta know is that they got 3 groups. You have a single mother and a radicalized daughter. The daughter's radicalized against the Purge, by the way. Then you have Matt Saracen from Friday Night Lights and his very confusing relationship with this woman. Are they an ex-wife, ex-girl? They're separating, but not that you can't really tell why because that's a thing. It was cool seeing him in this film, though, because I hadn't seen him in anything since Friday Night Lights. Then you have this strange, mysterious, kind of attractive man who totally won't be the anti-hero of the movie. I assume that's why he's in multiple Purge movies. We see the mother and daughter preparing for the Purge. Then we get to some actual action when Matt Saracen and his lady friend run into some hooligans with masks. It turns out when they start to drive away that their car was messed with, and they break down on the side of the road with it only being like 20 minutes until the Purge. Why would you be out when the Purge is about to start? I don't know how many years after the first movie this movie is supposed to take place, maybe the next year. But if there's been several Purges, wouldn't you have it on your wall, like on a calendar or in your phone, like beep, 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 good morning, the Purge is today. well, guess what, brother? I ain't going out today. At least not too far from home. They then start running away from the masked people helplessly as the purge commences. Later on in the night, the single mom and daughter end up having a pretty crazy thing happen at their house. We see a group pull up in a semi-truck and all these fellas with like armor and guns just hop out and they start cleansing the building. So we immediately get a conspiracy that the government is trying to purge people also. Who thought that the government would do evil things, guys? Wow, that's crazy. They go around the building killing everyone. One of their neighbors shows up and wants to do some nasty things to them but gets shot. And for whatever reason, instead of just killing the girls there, they take them outside, giving just enough time for our action man to pull up and see these women helplessly being held by these fellas with guns. He comes out and saves them. But before they get back to the car, that's where Matt Saracen and his lady friend show up in his backseat hiding. Reluctantly, they all drive off, but guess what? The semi-truck door opens up in the back, or the trailer door, and a guy has a f***ing minigun. After narrowly escaping with their lives, the car breaks down a couple blocks away and they pull into an alley. The action hero guy wants to go off because it's insinuated that he is going purging to kill some people, probably somebody that's wronged him or done something tragic to a family member of his. But it turns out the others really need this guy to survive. After a bit of back and forth, the mom is able to lie to him and tell him that they can head to a friend of hers who has a car that he can use to go hunt down whoever he needs. So they all decide to head off together and try to make it to Sanctuary. The film does an excellent job here, in my opinion, of showing just how crazy the Purge night is in the city. I think it's a lot better than any of the other movies, and it actually had me a bit enveloped in it, in the story and what was going to happen to the characters. I actually kind of cared about the characters in this movie. The action in the movie never feels pointless either, and I don't ever remember being put off by any of the jump cuts during action sequences, so that's solid. This is probably the only Purge film I got any sort of enjoyment out of. My only real gripes about this film is its obvious leaning and some things that don't quite make sense. So let's talk about those. Why is every citizen that is out here walking around with military rifles? I can't say the word of what they are, but let's just say they're semi-automatic plus. Maybe in this society that the Purge is based in, there's no restrictions on firearms that citizens can own. That just sounds like a mess to be made when you're a fanatical, crazy government that could be overthrown. Also, the daughter in this movie of the single mom is watching and listening to this like guerrilla warfare. He's a black guy. They're very reminiscent of like African guerrilla fighters for some reason. That felt a little weird to me. But to think about it, if it's the black community, I guess they're probably the most affected because they target impoverished communities to somehow pass more wealth up higher. I mean, you could do the same thing by just passing wealth down. That's not communism. That's just an idea. Maybe lower the taxes for poor people and enforce gains taxes. I don't know what you gotta do. But is killing poor people going to help? You guys aren't killing each other fast enough. I guess it would be a good way for California to rid its population of homeless people. Those tents sure are unsightly. So going back to this guy, this anti-government guy, he's like a hacker man and is hacking into different feeds and radios and shit around the city. Nothing comes from it till later on in the film other than a bit of hypocrisy. This guy like wants to take down a corrupt tyrannical government, which is super based like that. That's awesome. Like, I'm rooting for him. The Purge is really messed up, but there's a little problem. He seems to be spreading a bunch of really dumb propaganda about how guns are bad and cause violence and how dangerous they are. How does he plan to overthrow this tyrannical government if you just think he's going to use guns? So he thinks that the things that he's going to use that would help them not be in a situation like they are in are bad. Brother, the government doesn't stand a chance against everyday citizens. Do you guys remember what happened in Afghanistan? A bunch of guys that were wearing sandals using 1950s era guns wrecked the United States government. And it wasn't because the United States government had a lower KDA for all the gamers out there. No, the US soldiers were taking out hundreds of them for every one. If they ever got lucky enough to blow a tank or something up, it was shocking. But guess what? They actually had a part of them in the fight. You couldn't look at the citizens around and be able to depict whether or not they are Taliban or not, right? You're never sure who the insurgents are. Our government didn't seem to have a problem with killing random civilians in Afghanistan and such. I mean, look at what Julian Assange put out and look at where he is. By the way, CIA, I am saying this and I am sorry. Please do not ever try to kill me. I know I'm not important, but I just think that the idea that the United States government would be able to take out citizens, they're not going to be able to use tanks on the road. What are you going to do? Destroy your infrastructure? You're not going to drop bombs on cities. Guess what? You just destroyed your infrastructure. Like, you depend on us. The government doesn't make money, kids. The government takes our money. Your biggest gripe is about guns, when you have to use them to take out a tyrannical government. That is pretty much the main founding factor of what the Second Amendment is about. Like, you are doing the best argument for them while arguing against them. I find that wild. Hey guys, we're planning on taking up arms against the tyrannical government and dismantling them, and let's go ahead and shit on the right that allows us to do that. What? You try to enforce a police state, guess what happens? You accidentally shoot some grandma down the street? Well, guess who's gonna be really pissed off about that? The everyday people. How are you gonna pick and choose who's on our side, who isn't? Good luck, brother. You're dead. You're dead! Anyway, politics, which I don't even really consider political, it's more so just, I don't know, have you ever read John Locke? Do you know what the Founding Fathers wrote about these things? It's just classical, like, political philosophy and the idea of human rights, which are being abused in this movie. I think I'm thinking too hard about this film. The guy that wrote this movie obviously isn't too bright. Let's move on. Our little group of misfits makes their way through the city. As I was saying, it's actually really fun and interesting watching them try to, like, survive all the crazy crap going on around them. To actually be placed on the street where the purge is happening, it's the idea that these movies probably had no other choice but to go with. We were all thinking, I wonder what it's like outside this crappy house. After making it through the city, they end up coming across this tunnel, a little train tunnel, and they have to walk through it. And this is quite possibly the silliest scene in the movie. So picture this. You have our group of people all walking together, you know, in the dark. They find some homeless people in there and continue walking. And then some guys in some all-terrain vehicles, 4x4, I don't know what you'd call them. They have, like, machine guns attached to them, and they come through. They even have, like, flamethrowers, and they're trying to kill all the homeless people. So now we get a very violent scene of them mowing people down while the group tries to run away through the tunnels. Let's think about this. As we see in the beginning of them walking through the tunnel, not very long. It takes them like 5 minutes to get through the tunnel. Maybe 4 minutes. So they spend 4 minutes running through a tunnel, and they're barely ahead of these guys in the cars. And then we get the silly moment, because already it's a little silly. The mother decides to fall over on the tracks, and it takes her over 40 seconds just to stand back up. But not only after she stands up, they just stand around and talk to each other for a little while longer too, while there are cars chasing after you with machine guns and flamethrowers on the back of them. I guess dialogue somehow slows down time. You gotta love that. In a survival situation where your life is at risk, it's best to stop where you are and talk things out for a little while. Avalanche coming? Let's just sit here and talk for a minute. Time will surely slow down. In the end, the Matt Saracen guy ends up being shot, but they all make it out, and they're able to find their way to that lady's friend's house and take refuge. Long story short here, the mom tells the guy, hey, that car didn't actually exist, while the people inside the home are all slowly bickering and falling apart, until one of the ladies realizes or has known that her sister is her husband, so she just starts shooting her family. The people are able to make it out alive, luckily, but now the military guys from earlier, the mercenaries, they're showing back up, so they gotta run again. But as soon as they make it outside, you're like, oh god, they finally made it out free, but it's shot at this angle, so you know something's gonna happen because it's super zoomed in on them. Well, the masked kids from earlier end up kidnapping them all and taking them to this place. I thought maybe the masked kids would actually end up being good guys or something. I thought maybe the movie would go down a route like that, but it didn't. The masked kids instead end up selling them out to a group of rich folk who put on some type of weird laser tag, but with real humans and real guns.
Good luck. We'll see you shortly on the hunting grounds.
Our action hero ends up, surprisingly, destroying all of them fairly easily, but then the security for this group manages to make their way in. There is another instance of a tiny little woman carrying around 2 machetes for no reason while other people have guns. I get that in close proximity, knives and weapons like swords or machetes are much better if your gun's not already out. But brother, you're in a maze. You don't know where the guy's coming from. So obviously they get destroyed. They all group back up together, and I think Matt Saracen dies at some point here, which really sucked because I liked Matt. But they're able to defend themselves from the security up until the hacker man, guerrilla fighter guy shows up and manages to protect them all. Matt Saracen's lady friend, ex-wife, getting divorced soon, girlfriend, whatever she is, decides to stay back. And now it's just Action Man, the single mom, and her daughter. Action Man has to go through with his plan now. Let's go back for a second though. Why would you kill QB1? Like right before him and his woman were going to get back together. It was obviously that, like, I was like, oh, they're going to end up getting back together. This crazy situation's going to have some sort of trauma bonding for the couple, and they're going to live happily ever after. And I was rooting for them because I love QB1, but they killed QB1. That's the Texas State champion quarterback. They killed Matt. Oh, that's sad. I'd like to point out that the guerrilla fighters are using like early Soviet-style AKs too in this. Just kind of funny how obvious the socialist rebel look. Think Che Guevara minus all the racism and evil that he did. Still kind of cool. So yeah, Action Man and the mom and daughter end up stealing a car from one of the evil people, and then he goes ahead and starts driving to this place he's gonna get revenge. He goes on to tell the family what happened. Long story short, some guy was drunk driving and crashed into his son and killed him, and got off of it without any type of prison or something like that. So now he wants revenge. He wants to kill him for taking his son. He breaks into the guy's house and he stands over the couple like he's gonna murder the guy, but then the camera cuts to him walking outside, and uh-oh, the military man is back and he's not happy. He's gonna kill Action Man. Not too fast though. Even if it was insinuated he killed the guy, guess what? He didn't kill the guy. He had a change of heart. The guy comes out of his house and shoots the military guy in the head. And right before his friends can show up for backup, Purge sirens go off and it's like, the annual Purge has officially ended or some shit. So the government can't shoot at them now? Or the mercenaries? I mean, I didn't think that laws ever stopped the government from killing people or doing atrocious things, but I guess they do in this universe. I really couldn't tell you why a letter agency would quit. Maybe these guys aren't hired by a letter agency. It seems awfully weird that they wouldn't be, though. I really like this movie, though. The action's very fun compared to the last movie. I think that's why I enjoyed it so much. I'm pretty sure I watched these movies back to back, and this movie made me so much happier. All the anti-government sentiment inside of these movies, I actually was digging. I like that. I enjoy it. By the way, government, I didn't mean that. Remember, kids, the government always has your best interest in mind. You can always trust the CIA and the FBI. They will always tell the truth. They will never cover anything up. After the Purge sirens go off, they make it to a hospital and we get to see the aftermath, which is another kind of, why would the Purge be a thing? Do you know how much devastation this just caused? How long is it going to take to clean up? I guess that's getting people more work, so... Yeah, but you did cause it. That was the Purge Anarchy. I'm in a bit of a funky mood, so I don't know how well that flowed. This is going to be a blast to edit. Following the little thing telling us that it's 364 more days until the next annual Purge, the credits are just really anti-American trash, to be honest. Ignoring all this messaging, though, the movie was a really fun watch. I liked the characters, even if some of them were kind of shallow. The mysterious badass Action Man was kind of cool. Watching Matt Saracen in the Purge is a delight. I just wish he didn't die. There's definitely a lot of tense moments throughout this movie too that hold off from it being boring. There's one thing I do want to talk about when it comes to the action in this film, and that's that the guns sound like science fiction laser guns. There's like a scene of them shooting a vector and it literally sounds like an alien space weapon. If the director wasn't so on the nose with this political messaging and so forward with it, I think I'd like it a lot more. I don't know why the guy had to be so obvious. If I were making up a future where America was taken over by some fascist, tyrannical government, I'd try to create a fun background as to how it happened, which these movies never really do. It just feels like shitty analogies comparing our modern day government to this one. I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more if I would have turned my brain off to thinking about some of the things that's going on inside this movie and just tried to sit down and enjoy it. But that's really hard to do when you're making a video where you bitch about films. Anyway, this is probably like a 6.5 out of 10 for me, maybe a 6 out of 10. Not bad at all. I'd probably rewatch it again. It was fun. I'd have to be kind of bored though. I'd recommend this to people who've only seen the first movie or have never seen any of these movies. I'd be like, oh, if you want to watch the Purge movie, just watch the second one. It's fun. But let me tell you, I wouldn't recommend any of the other movies. So let's talk about that. The Purge election year. Now, with a title like this, it sounds very on the nose political. I thought it maybe could have gone into like something about how the government ended up electing this group, maybe, but it never does that. But politics aside, which aren't super prevalent in this movie, not as much as the next two films get, or at least the last one, it's not awful. This was probably the film I was least looking forward to in the franchise, though, because of the title. I looked at 2016 as the release date and election year, and I was just like, oh no. I never really want to have a fella from New York City making a politically charged horror movie that won't dive into the intricacies of this fictional government he's created and its politics, but instead base it entirely off of our own worldview of current day politics. That's not really enticing. I don't think I want to experience that much of anyone's opinion, even if I agree with them. Nevertheless, let's get into the movie. It starts off interesting with a serial killer angle that I wasn't expecting, and they never really touched on before. That quickly ends, and it cuts to a screen saying 18 years later. We are instantly introduced to more of the director's opinions.
Senator Charlie Roan. 18 years ago, Roan was forced to watch the brutal execution of her entire family on Purge night.
Presiding over my party's midnight purge mass because I still believe in it.
The Midnight Purge Mass, where our great NFFA leaders gather together and slaughter innocents. Is murder our new religion? Senator.
Murder is our new religion. That's snappy.
I guess the religious right are the evil, murderous people here. Maybe there's a lot of neocons that probably do stuff like that. Sure. Actually, I remember something in the Bible where Jesus teaches us that slaughtering poor, innocent people is the closest a man can get to heaven on earth. I may in fact have an aneurysm by the end of this. This movie takes place in 2024, a bit similar, huh? I guess they got the idea of politics seeping into every waking moment of American life down pretty well, though. Spot on. It's after our daily session of being inundated by annoyance that we learn Europeans and people from other countries, but they mainly showed Europeans, are traveling to America to take part in the Purge. They call it Purge tourism. I think we even see some French people doing it, which sucks. They're gonna get got. Imagine, Purge is going on, you see some Frenchmen with guns outside. Well, Mr. Napoleon, not this time. After that, we get an interesting little change in the rules of the Purge, where one of the foundational rules that we've heard about, where you can't attack government people that are of a certain tier, that doesn't exist anymore. Now you can just go after the government, which doesn't make sense, because imagine you have a crappy tyrannical government. What is your first idea? I am not looking at overthrowing the government. I'm sure they'll definitely make real change by the end of this film. We then figure out the main purpose of this movie, the main plot. There's this lady that's in Congress or Senate, and she's now running for president to end the Purge. This law got changed, assuming by the party in power, to try to get people to kill her, or so they could send mercenaries to kill her. But that just seems a little silly, because why wouldn't you just assassinate her? Have the CIA do it and pretend that she died of a overdose or in a car accident or something. They didn't have much trouble in Dallas. I'd like to look into the camera and say, I do not believe that the CIA had anything to do with that crazy moment in Dallas, Texas in 1963. The US government took no part. The people that had everything to gain did nothing. So yeah, this woman wants to end the Purge, and they're pulling some sneaky stuff to put her life in danger. Problem is, it's not people going after her, as I said, it's the government hiring mercenaries again, but this time much sillier. I don't feel like diving deep into this film. I mean, I'm trying to keep all of this a little short, but also it's just going to end with too much ranting and too much just bitterness from me, and I think that might get grating after a while. You guys might get a bit annoyed. The action man from the last movie is helping defend this woman. He's the bodyguard for her. They're all held up in this house. She has a shitload of security around her. There are a few other people, and they all meet up just like the last movie too. There's a guy that owns a shop and a girl that drives an EMT thing during the Purge to help people. The shop owner decides to stay out and protect his store, given real rooftop Korean kind of vibes. Couldn't come forward. After we meet those people, we see the government lady's bodyguards, other than Action Man, are all corrupt and try to murder her, but Action Man gets them out. And it's during this point where we get to meet the mercenaries who will be hunting them all movie. I can't exactly say the political leanings of the mercenaries on YouTube. The word is a no-no word. I will be replacing that word with Germans, if you get what I mean. No offense to the German people, you guys are great. But I'm sure you know the national movement in Germany throughout the 1930s and 40s. Why does it annoy me that these people are Germans? It's dumb. I also can't show the guys on the video because they have these weird symbols tattooed on their arms and other weird symbols on their patches. Some of them look a lot like a bolt of lightning Harry Potter would cast, that thing on his forehead. I don't know if YouTube is just dumb and decides to censor that stuff, or if their AI is trash. Action Man and this president wannabe run off and meet the store owner and EMT lady. They have this crazy sequence of a helicopter chasing them down the road. They manage to completely outsmart the helicopter guys, and the whole rest of the film is a very boring cat and mouse game between the Germans and the president lady. Probably an hour and 15 minutes after this begins, the film goes down a different path. We figure out that this underground group of EMTs has like a rebel group in it, and they're actually trying to sneak into this church to assassinate the president of the NFFA or whatever, the New Founding Fathers of America or whatever they're called. So they go to the hospital or to the church too, and they gotta show that he's a corrupt guy and Christian, and they pretend to be Christians, even though that's super unchristian, to kill people. I've lost my mind. It's also very hot under this bright light. I have a long thing written here about, oh, let the tyrannical Purge government take your rights away. You can trust them, right? Blah, blah, blah. I'm done bitching about these movies at this point. I'm just kind of tired of them. What ends up happening is they go into the church and messing everybody up. After the day's saved and she can actually run for president and won't be killed, and the other guy is, I don't even remember what happens, to be honest. Action Man gets a final showdown with the leader of Germany. I'm literally losing my mind. Yeah, the movie's, the country's saved. Yay. He stabs him. Cool. But anyway, The Purge election year is the most politically charged movie I had seen to this point, probably in my life, and I don't want to ever go near it again. 2 out of 10, ass film, much worse action than the last movie. The acting's worse too. The story's dumb. Hate the movie. Yeah, you suck. This movie, I guess, at least had some cool helicopters chasing people and them running away. And that brings us to the 4th movie in the Purge franchise. And oh my, it is a doozy. This movie is directed by a different person, but it just so happens to be written by the same guy. More. I think his name's like James DeMonico or something. Fuck, dude, quit writing movies. You're making $90 million a pop, though. Obviously, you're gonna keep getting more opportunity. This movie is meant to be a prequel to the other Purge films. It's called The First Purge.
This is not a test. This is your emergency broadcast system announcing the commencement of the NFFA social experiment on Staten Island, New York.
Blessed be our new founding fathers and America, a nation reborn. May God be with you all.
It tries to show how it began, but it utterly fails. Instead of giving us an interesting movie showing how this political party, the NFFA, took over, I guess this movie does circle back more to horror than the last 2 have, for whatever that's worth. I'm not really going to talk about the script of this movie or recap it or anything, because this movie sucks way too much for me to do that. It actually took me like 3 attempts to watch this movie for the first time, and then another like 2 attempts to rewatch it again. This was the hardest one to get through just because of how, oh my god, pointless it is. This movie doesn't need to exist. It did not need to be in. I actually thought for a moment while writing this out, or I was going to not even include this movie, but I figured I might as well go through with it. So let's get started. They're going to be doing a little 12-hour experiment in this place. Everybody's allowed to commit all crime, and it's all going to be recorded and studied, right? If they end up making it out, they get $5,000 given to them. We see some people being interviewed, some crazy people that just want to murder people. One of the main villains in this movie is interviewed, and it's very silly in the beginning. Kind of creepy. I mean, it would be kind of scary, I suppose. The execution of all this is freaking horrible, though. Let me explain. The action sequences in this movie are by far the worst they've ever been in the Purge movies. Every action sequence in this movie has 5,000 jump cuts. There is not a second of fluid motion without a cut to a different camera angle. I feel like this movie had some sort of interesting takes on being anti-government against this NFFA, too. And it tried to show, like, the real victims of the Purge, i.e. low-income people, inner-city people, or in the case of the next film, rural people. The issue is none of the characters playing the victim of the government matter at all. They're all shallow with 0 development. The only character development in this movie is a random woman who works for the government overseeing this, and she's just murdered. I guess the main character and her younger brother, who they have a bit of relationship development between them, but neither of them are that flawed so they don't really overcome any obstacles or grow. So it's mostly focusing on all the things happening around them. More Purge stuff that the second film already did, but it actually had characters. I mean, what would be one of the main points as to why the second film wasn't that bad, right? You have Action Man. Action Man actually has some character development. He starts off as this very pessimistic and angry guy seeking vengeance for the death of his son, and ends up forgiving a guy and protecting others throughout the whole movie. So he has a real good guy arc and a happy ending. This mother and daughter end up making it out alive and develop a stronger connection together. Matt Saracen and his lady friend end up developing a really nice connection until he's killed. This movie doesn't really have any of that. We have like the leader of some drug runners who kind of decides to protect his own community. And the introduction leading up to the actual Purge is a very boring 20 minutes, and you follow all the characters sort of doing their own thing throughout the entire film, so it's a lot of cutting back and forth. They eventually end up kind of running into each other at the very end of the movie. Not bringing the characters together until the end of the movie was actually a pretty shitty idea. All the contestants in this little challenge have this really silly stylistic choice done with them. For this experiment, they have to wear contact lenses that I'm assuming have cameras in them because we're futuristic here. But they all have these really bright neon colors that are very dumb looking. That put me out of this movie almost instantly. Action sequences are cut like crap. The main bad guy in this movie is just a crazy guy that uses impractical weapons and means of killing people. And there are more feds pretending to be Germans, just like real life. The movie doesn't play a role in expanding upon this universe whatsoever. Not even slightly. Nothing even slightly interesting happens throughout the movie. The movie still has a ton of political messaging too. I guess I can quickly sum up the movie. These people survived the night and joined together, beating the bad guy and making it all out, and they're all alive. That's the movie. That was the first Purge, or the fourth Purge, but titled the first Purge. Part of me was giving up on the whole idea of making these, which is why it's taken me like a month to make a video on horror films, because it was just so political and I didn't want to touch on this. Because I know people are going to be mad at me for thinking that defending yourself from the government is a cool idea that very smart people in the 1600s wrote about. Wow, it's my opinion, it's my channel. This movie has a few silly moments that are kind of fun. You have this moment where this kid joins with his friends and goes to this big block party because nobody's taking this whole Purge thing seriously. But then the crazy guy shows up and starts killing people, so everybody panics and is like, oh shit, this is for real now. The payoff was bad. I just had much higher hopes for this movie. Whenever I first went into this, I assumed that the first Purge would probably be the most interesting movie. I didn't look at the ratings of this movie, I just looked at a list of the movies. So I just had high hopes that I was going to get a lot of interesting backstory to the Purge. This, however, felt like a quick write-off just to make a buck. So the first Purge, I'm giving a 1 out of 10. That takes us to the last movie in the Purge franchise, at least so far. Let's hope that it is the last, by the way. This movie is called The Forever Purge. If you were expecting them to go out with a bang, you could say that, but it's one of those depressed and alone bangs. The kind of bang you leave a note behind for your family when you're just out of your luck and at the end of the rope, if you know what I mean. I'm trying to think about if I want to cover this movie, because this is probably the most political The Purge movie of all of them. Let's just try anyway. The Forever Purge begins with some relevant political topics, with the Spanish-speaking people sneaking into America. We learn that this movie is on the southern border in Texas. They say like all the people that come in here are Mexicans too, even though most of the people that sneak into this country aren't Mexicans. They're from South America. Mexico's very corrupt and a lot of it sucks, but it's a very wealthy nation. I think Mexico might be in the top 10 of all countries when it comes to like their economy. It was a bit of whiplash because I felt like the last movie kind of started to find the things to talk about, at least on a political level, that wouldn't just be annoying, but this one goes right back to it, which is fun, I suppose. I'm a person that I consider myself to be kind of centered on a lot of issues, but I do lean very libertarian. I think that liberty and freedom are the most important aspects of being a human being. Your God-given rights should be valued above all else. Being a cringy libertarian government disliker does make me a bit conservative in today's environment. And the people in this movie, there's this fella who owns a ranch. He seems to be a good old country boy who probably leans a little bit conservative, so he's the white guy with blue eyes that is a bad guy, but also not entirely a bad guy. He's an anti-hero just because he's a Texan. This movie was made in 2021, though. We see them on the ranch just messing around with a horse, then we cut to a TV news screen with a token Native American guy just to make the Hollywood people feel good about themselves. No, Do Native Americans play a role in this movie? I think they do towards the end, so maybe he's not too token. There's like some arguments between characters throughout this, like the one of the guys been like, I don't want no damn Spanish spoke in my house. Man, relating it to Mexicans, even though Spanish is a European language from Spain of all places. English people, like Anglo-Saxons and Anglo-Americans, have been at war with Spanish people, probably more than we haven't, so you figured we'd know. Also, the old Mexican government was probably completely controlled by old Spanish stock, and a lot of it still probably is, just like most of South America.
I don't even know if I want our kids speaking Spanish in this house.
A really weird, like, race topic that gets brought up, we're like inundated with. We see one of the guys being like, well, he doesn't like us if we're like Mexican or Argentinian. I'll show you the scene.
Your son doesn't like me because I'm Mexican. A cowboy shouldn't be from Mexico or Argentina or from somewhere else.
The reason this doesn't make any sense to bring up Argentina of all places, I mean, a lot of Latin America, to be honest, is very white. A lot of European ancestry, whether it be the Portuguese or the Spanish. Anyway, bringing up Argentina is crazy. That is straight up a European country in South America. I think they are whiter than the United States is. I think that Argentina has more white people than America, maybe percentage-wise, but it might be close total number-wise too. The writers don't have a clue. Figured if you were going to push this kind of programming, at least understand it. So let's talk about the movie finally. The rancher guy and them hunker down for the purge. Nothing happens for the night, but we learn the next day that the purge didn't end. People are still going out and killing everyone. We learn that because some Mexican woman's attacked outside of her work. Then we see the people back on the ranch getting attacked by some people that used to work there, and they keep saying that this is the forever purge now. So the movie pretty much follows this family on this ranch and this Mexican lady and other people riding in his big truck, which is kind of weird that he's driving like an Optimus Prime Western Star truck. They're able to get away. We learn that because the forever purge is happening and everything's falling and going to shit because people are finally having enough and overthrowing the government and everything else, just turning it into anarchy, they have to try to make it down to Mexico. They drive down there for a bit, but get stopped at some border town I can't remember the name of. They run around the city streets and fight some people, but then they end up getting separated and make it back to each other. And then they find a group of Mexican people who are going to help them sneak across the border. They go with them and leave, and then there's this group of racist bad guys who are super racist and bad that are chasing after them, and for some reason they're in Texas, but these guys all have accents and act like they're from the deep-ass South. They end up sneaking across the border. It's just all pointless violence and so much political, just every part of this movie. Like, I don't like to use the word woke because it's dumb, but if you were to define a movie as woke, this is your film. I just can't imagine actually giving this movie time. I think I disliked this movie more than the first movie, and there were actually parts I liked of this movie, but it was so political. I just felt like I was non-stop being inundated by fucking nonsense. I wanted to purge by the time this was over. I want the purge to come out. I can't say it. Quit making movies. You suck. The laziness of this movie. Everything's a problem. It's all bad, and I'm done with The Purge. The Purge is one of the worst franchises I've ever spent time watching. I would rather go back and rewatch Twilight 5 times over, the whole Twilight franchise, than ever watch these movies ever again. These suck. They're bad. I'm giving this movie a 0 out of 10 too. F*** you, movie. F*** your messaging. F*** everything. Quit making movies that are filled with politics. If you're going to have a cool dystopian, neo-futuristic society that has a government takeover and they murder people once a year, so crime is super illegal and nobody commits it because once a year everybody can commit whatever kind of crime they want. Do something interesting. I'm tired of the metaphor. I watched too much metaphor about how bad our society is and how bad only half of the people in this society are and how the other half of people are awesome and don't do anything wrong when they're all the same thing. Everything sucks. The world sucks. You! Okay, well, that was The Purge, guys. The movies are very, 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 very bad. I'm never going to talk about this again. If you didn't like the video and don't like the things I say, kick rocks, brother, you suck. And if you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching. Love you. Like and subscribe are always appreciated. You guys are the best if you're still here. Can't even begin to describe how much I appreciate that. Seeing people enjoy what I make or tell me interesting things in the comments always brightens my day up and makes me a bit happier. So, yeah, feel free to comment and talk with me below. I have no clue what I'm going to be doing next. This video is going to be a disaster to edit because this series really worked me up and made me angry. I turned into a little crybaby, but I'm still gonna make it anyway because I spent way too much time time. If you like The Purge, and for whatever reason I don't think that it does anything particularly well, but none of the messaging bothered you and you think I didn't give it a fair shake, I'm actually kind of sorry. I wanted to go into this video not being affected by the just constant metaphor, and it got very old very quick. And it's not even that I 100% disagree with everything they talk about in these movies. They bring up some very blatant issues in society. I don't want to constantly be reprimanded by your film and being told what I need to think about. Well, I watch movies to have a good time, to be scared, to laugh. I don't watch movies to think about how depressing the world is, dude. There's a specific time and place. I'd just read The Road or watch the movie if I wanted to be depressed. I wouldn't watch The Purge. I wish I could have gave the last two movies in this a fair shake, but I was very tired of it. I do think that the last movie overall isn't the worst. It's just way too political. The action is a lot better than the fourth film, so I will give them that. There was like an interesting thing I thought about during this film. I'm so sweaty right now. It's so hot. When they're driving away in this semi-truck trying to escape because everybody's purging around, it felt kind of like a zombie movie, and I thought that was really cool, but it never goes down that survival, try to get out of town and survive against crazy people who are trying to purge forever route, and instead goes into seeing like the government trying to take back control of cities, and there's tanks in the streets, and people are just randomly attacking each other, and then there's bad racist people who are out to get everyone. That was boring. But yeah, I should probably end this video. Again, thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. Subscribe, notifications on, whatever you gotta do if you want to see more. Peace.